Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing incredibly well, and I hope I'm finding you fighting fit and ready to listen to another story, because let's not kid, nothing in this entire world beats a good story. You can lie back, relax, and just listen, and in my opinion, it doesn't get better than that. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, it had been a hard, cruel day, when it felt as if the entire world was conspiring against me. I think we've all had days like that, when nothing appears to go right, and it's hard not to take it personally. I'd woken up that morning to my mother throwing ice-cold water over my face. "Mum, stop it! Stop it! Don't do that!" I cried in protest. "What are you doing?" The freezing water had jolted my sleeping body out of its slumber with a rude awakening, and icy cold water was trickling down my face, onto my pyjamas, and down my chest. My mother is standing there, with her hands on her hips, staring at me indignantly. "Frida, how many times have I told you to wake up? But you never ever listen, do you?" I groaned. "Mum, I'm tired." "So we all are tired, Frida. But unlike you, we push ourselves up out of our beds. It's called having self-discipline. Good job you're not in the army. That's what I can say. You'd be doing 1,000 push-ups by now for failing to get up. Look at the time it is," she says, glancing at her watch. "You've got 10 minutes, Frida. If you don't hurry up, you'll miss your lift club. Mrs. Montgomery will be here in any second, and you know how stroppy she gets if you keep her waiting. That woman can be explosive if you rub her up the wrong way. Believe me, I know." "Where is Rolf?" I asked my mother. "Your sensible brother has been up for ages, unlike you. He's downstairs eating his breakfast in the kitchen, like you should have been doing a long time ago if you weren't so completely complacent. If you must know, I made your absolute favourite this morning, blueberry pancakes. You've missed out, but your lunchbox is already prepared. It's in the kitchen. You'll only be able to eat it at morning break. Now hurry up. Your father's at work already, and the dog walker has already picked up Jinxie for his morning walk. You're the only one lagging behind, procrastinating, dawdling as usual, holding everybody up with your slackness. It's a pity they don't give prizes for sloth. You'd get the gold star, that's for sure. Don't be so mean, Mummy. I'm not that bad. Get a move on then." My family live in the rather enchanting, quaint old coal mining town of Roslyn, dappled in the layers of a rich, creamy history. Kittitas County is located in the Cascades, 80 miles from Seattle, which is approximately an hour and a half away by car. It's nestled in the foothills of the Snoqualmie Mountains and is a small, congenial place to live, where people are friendly and are on first-name terms with each other. The hit television series Northern Exposure was actually filmed here to replicate the exterior scenes of a fictional town in Alaska called Sicily. I groan and quickly snatch my school dress off a hanger, and I put it on as fast as I can. I brush my hair, pulling it back from my face in a neat ponytail, fastened together with a navy ribbon. I can't find my black leather shoes anywhere. I begin to panic as I start to frantically search for them. Where are they? I was sure I'd put them by my bed. "Mum, I can't find my shoes anywhere." "Oh, for goodness sake, Frida. I need this like a hole in my head this morning. Where did you last put them?" My mother begins to frantically help me search for them, in vain, as she looks under beds, rifles through cupboards, peers behind curtains and doors, rummages through drawers, and even feels behind the lining of the sofas and upholstered chairs in the house. But they're nowhere to be found. My mother is exasperated, her pretty face furrowed with worry lines. "Honestly, Frida, I'm a nervous wreck. Why do you keep doing this to me? None of this would ever happen if you were prudently punctual like your brother Rolf, and would actually get up in time. Oh, I could live without all this unnecessary stress, this chaotic upheaval. This sort of thing happens when you're disorganized. I want you to think, where did you actually have them last?"
Well, when I came back from school yesterday. That's when I had them. But where did you take your shoes off? In my bedroom, by the side of my bed. Well, that's very strange, Frida, because they can't just go walkabout like that, can they? Shoes don't actually have legs and feet like we do.
All of a sudden we hear Mrs. Montgomery pounding loudly at the front door and ringing the bell incessantly, so it roars through the house intrusively, like an ungodly ambulance siren that won't shut up. My mother goes down to speak to the irate woman, who is looking less than thrilled to be kept waiting. "Sorry, Nora," my mother said to Mrs. Montgomery. "It's Frida. She can't find her shoes anywhere. They've completely disappeared off the face of the planet. I could write a book on how many times Frida's shoes vanish." Mrs. Montgomery has about as much humour as an aggrieved Rottweiler dog. Her nostrils are flaring, her eyelashes twitching rather too fast. If she was a dragon, she would be breathing out fire. She finds my mother's comical comments to be in poor taste. "What's wrong with your daughter? It's always Frida that holds everybody up. Why am I not surprised about this? Frida's up to her old tricks again. If she was a car on the road, she'd be causing major traffic jams. That girl's got a rusty engine on her. If she doesn't hurry up, I'm going without her. I'm not going to allow those poor children in the car to be late for school on her account. It's not fair on them. I'll give her 2 minutes, and that's being decent." My brother Rolf climbs out of Mrs. Montgomery's car, looking nonplussed. "What's going on, Mum? Why is Frida keeping us waiting? What's the hold-up this time?" "Frida can't find her shoes. We've searched absolutely everywhere for them. You don't happen to know where they are, do you, Rolf?" "I saw Jinxie with one of her shoes yesterday. He was trotting down the stairs with a shoe in his mouth." "Oh, Ralph, why didn't you say something? And furthermore, stop Jinxie," my mother scolds. "You know what he's like when he gets his teeth into anything. That's why I buy him those pig snouts and hooves to chew on, to keep him distracted." She dashes quickly to Jinxie's basket. I found them, and discovers both shoes tucked behind the folds of the doggy blanket. But one of them has been chewed up so badly I can't wear it, as the rubber heel has been torn away from the leather. "Look at this shoe," says my mother gingerly. "It's ruined. I wish to goodness when you took your shoes off, Frida, you'd put them away in your cupboard and close the closet door behind you. Why is being tidy to the two of you kids like a foreign language? Jinxie will chew anything if he gets a chance. You know he will. That dog has an incessant desire to get his teeth into absolutely everything. Remember when he completely ripped up the sofa? We came home to find the entire living room covered in foam. Jinxie looked totally nonchalant about what he'd done. It was as if butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. He couldn't understand why we were so grievously upset." My mother groans. "Another expense I could have avoided. You better put on a pair of sneakers. You can't wear these to school." I look appalled. The last thing I want to do is to stick out like a sore thumb at school, draw unwanted attention to myself. "Mum, I can't wear sneakers to school. Everybody will be staring at me. Please can't I stay at home, just for today, until you buy me another pair of school shoes?" "No, you can't. You're going to school, and you'll wear your sneakers. Is that understood?" "Yes, Mummy," I say, knowing that I can't argue against the Berlin Wall that is closing in on me, and when my mother puts up any resistance, I learnt a long time ago not to fight back. It's a losing battle. I groan, throwing my satchel over my shoulders reluctantly, resigned to the humiliating fact that I'll be the only one in school today, wearing bright orange sneakers. Everybody will be staring at me, and some people might be cruel enough to snigger. If only my sneakers were white, they wouldn't be so conspicuous, but this obtrusive orange stands out offensively against my school uniform. But I was the one that insisted on an orange pair of sneakers. I thought they looked hip. Now I'm beginning to regret that impromptu decision. I reluctantly climb into the car. Mrs. Montgomery's car always smells of leather, to be greeted by a tense atmosphere. She presses down the accelerator with a grievous punch, so that the car almost screeches as it swerves down the long road where we live. She's shaking her head indignantly,
glancing at me through the visor mirror with looks that could kill. "Frida, you're going to have to get your act together. You can't keep everybody waiting like this. I'm sorry. It's not acceptable." "Why are you always so late?" pipes Mrs. Montgomery's goody two-shoes daughter Amelia, who's glaring at me from the front seat as she chews her gum. "I'm never late, am I, Mummy?" "No, you're not, dear. You're never late. You never let your mummy down. But I do wish you'd get rid of that ghastly chewing gum. It's a disgusting habit." "Daddy says that chewing gum activates the saliva so you protect your teeth from tooth decay." "Your daddy says a lot of things, Amelia, and I don't actually agree with them all. He says dogs are frightened of the dark, so they can't sleep outdoors. I've never heard anything so ridiculous in my life. Look at the coyotes. They all live outside very well, thank you very much." "He says that, Mummy, because he doesn't want you to let the dog sleep outside. He says it's cruel." I rummaged through my rucksack, suddenly remembered that I'd left my lunch behind on the kitchen table. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm so sorry, but do you mind if we go back quickly to get my lunchbox? I left it at home." "Typical," says my brother. "You'll lose your head, Frida, if you're not careful." There are protests in the back of the car from all the young passengers, as all the members of our lift club, Louise, Chantel, Amelia, Robert and Peter, are not pleased with me. "Please, Mrs. Montgomery, don't go back," they say. "We don't want to get into trouble for being late, just because of Frida." "I'm sorry, Frida," says Mrs. Montgomery, "but I'm not going back to pick up your lunch for you. I've never known anyone so disorganized, so incredibly forgetful. I'll tell you what, I'll give you money for the tuck shop, but mind you pay me back." "But that's not fair, Mummy. You're giving Frida money for the tuck shop so she can have hot dogs and potato chips while we eat cold sandwiches. And I didn't forget my lunch behind like she did. I'd leave my lunch behind every day on purpose if it meant I could get money for the tuck shop." "You can have some money for the tuck shop tomorrow," says Mrs. Montgomery to her daughter. "But you know I don't approve of your eating too many hot dogs and potato chips. You'll break out in zits all over your face, and we can't have that." If that wasn't a bad enough start to the day, it only got worse as we ambled off to school. I could see my boyfriend Luke Thornby just scuttling past me like a rabbit darting to its burrow, cunningly pretending not to see me at all. He was deliberately ignoring me. Normally he'd come over to my locker and greet me enthusiastically, and we would garrulously chatter together about everything and nothing. But not this morning. It really hurt that he was avoiding me like this, as if I didn't even exist. "Luke!" I call after him. "Luke!" But he never turned around, not even once. He walked away, talking and laughing with his two best friends, Michael and Byron, who were giving me furtive glances. Luke was acting as if he'd never heard me. What the heck was going on? I felt grievously hurt, but more than feeling hurt, I felt offended and angry. My blood was boiling with indignation. How dare he ignore me like that? Later that morning, things got worse. I found myself unfortunate enough to be sitting in the headmistress's office. Mrs. Patchett was a middle-aged woman with curly grey hair, who always wore a very serious expression on her face. I was trembling in the chair when she asked me to sit down. Meeting up with Mrs. Patchett in her office was worse than visiting the dentist any day of the week. Every kid in our school knew that if you ended up in Mrs. Patchett's office, you were in heaps of trouble. "Well, what have you got to say for yourself, young lady? I pride myself on deportment in this school, and I won't tolerate sloppy dress. Why are you wearing the most ghastly orange sneakers? And where on earth are your school shoes? Do you realise how unsightly it looks to wear sneakers with your school uniform? And that orange colour is very, very unsightly." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Patchett, but my dog chewed up my school shoes, so I had nothing to wear." "It sounds like a very convenient excuse to me. And even if it is true, I suggest that you're more responsible, Frida. You should put your shoes away in the closet. Then your dog won't get to them. I'll let you wear your sneakers just this once, But tomorrow, if you're not wearing the correct school shoes, I'll send you home. There's another thing I'm rather concerned about, Frida. Many of the teachers say that you're often turning in your homework late. I hasten to say, Frida, it's incredible how everybody else in the school is able to complete their homework on time, but not you. I believe you even asked your teacher, Mrs. Yates, for a rain check. Now, I want to say this, Frida, we don't give anyone rain checks in this school. Do you understand? If we want your homework completed that evening, that's what we expect from you. We don't make special allowances under any circumstances, unless, of course, they're exceptional. I'm sorry, Mrs. Patchett. It won't happen again. Good, I'm very glad to hear that, Frida. And by the way, your mother came by. She dropped off your lunchbox, says Mrs. Patchett, handing it over to me. It seems to me, Frida, that you're becoming increasingly forgetful. You need to pull up your socks, young lady. Yes, Mrs. Patchett. If things couldn't get any worse, they did. It was lunchtime. I went to search for my boyfriend Luke, and I saw him walking along side by side with Eloise Parker. Are you kidding me? Eloise Parker! My heart sank. I was burning with jealousy. Luke was my first boyfriend. I'd known him for years and years. We'd grown up together. What was she doing with him? And why was Luke vindictively ignoring me like this? He hadn't even acknowledged me all day. Why was he being so spitefully mean, so cold, so callously heartless? I didn't know how he could even like Eloise. She was a toffee-nosed, stuck-up, condescending brat who was in my class at school, always sucking up to the teachers, buying them flowers, telling them how lovely they looked, when I knew she didn't mean a word of it. She just wanted the teachers to like her. It was blindingly obvious. Oh, this old thing, the teacher would say. I've had it for years and years. Thanks, Eloise. It's a very kind thing of you to say. I'm very pleased you like it. You're a very complimentary young lady. I clandestinely follow Eloise and Luke to the bottom of the school playground, opposite the tennis courts, where they sit together on a bench as they eat their packed lunches, as if butter wouldn't melt in their mouths. Are you kidding me? Has Luke got absolutely no shame? They're talking and laughing together, while Luke spontaneously kisses Eloise on the cheek. She blushes bright red and giggles. I can't take it anymore. I'm burning with an incandescent rage, my body trembling and shaking involuntarily with an unfathomable madness. I feel a fury rising up inside of me, and I march over to my boyfriend belligerently, like an elephant in a china shop, all guns blazing, nostrils flaring, eyes glaring, sparking and spitting like a roaring fire. What's going on here, Luke? This looks very nice and cosy, doesn't it? You and Eloise parked together on a bench, eating your lunch. Luke looks at me. He flushes a bright red colour, as if he's been caught with his pants down. We're just having lunch together, Frida. What's your problem? The problem is, Luke, you're supposed to be my boyfriend, in case you've forgotten about that. Why are you cheating on me? You shouldn't be having lunch with another girl. I saw you kiss Eloise on the cheek. I'm not your boyfriend anymore, Frida. Eloise and I are together now. So you were too gormless to break up with me, is that it? You just chose to ignore me? That's rich. You know what, Luke? I'm glad it's over between us, 'cause you're the biggest loser on the entire planet. And if I never ever see you again, I'll be very, very happy. Move on, Frida. We're not together anymore. Get over it. Oh, don't worry about that, Luke. I'm so over you, I say, trying to hide the tears that are filling my eyes. Don't you ever come near my house again on the weekend to play music with me, 'cause you're not welcome. And at that, I thunder away. When I returned home from school that afternoon, I was distressed to have been dumped by Luke, who lived further down the road from me, in the pink symmetrical-sized farmhouse with its grey slate roof. We'd played together for years since we were toddlers. Our mothers had been, and still were, the very best of friends. We had been inseparable for years. As in our small town, people can become like extended members of your own family. Even our foolish parents had hedged a bet that one day me and Luke would get married, as we connected so well together and were inseparable. Adults could be so foolish. I mean, what did they actually know? They couldn't predict the future. And as far as I was concerned, it was well and truly over between Luke and myself. And I never wanted to see him again as long as I lived. And I meant every single word of it. I was relieved to see my mother had brought me a brand new pair of black leather school shoes. At least I wouldn't get into trouble at school with Mrs. Patchett in the morning, who I don't doubt would send me home in a heartbeat if I arrived at school again with orange sneakers. She didn't suffer fools gladly, that woman. "What's wrong with you?" asks my brother when we returned home after being dropped off by Mrs. Montgomery. "You were very quiet in the car ride home. You never said a single word. You're normally so chatty." "I didn't feel like talking," I say. My brother studies me studiously. He knows something's up. My brother is very perceptive. Unfortunately, he notices my red eyes. "You've been crying, haven't you? I can see you've been crying." "Of course not," I say defensively. I wasn't going to let him see that I'd been blubbing in the school toilets for ages. I knew he'd call me a big baby. "You have, haven't you? You've been crying. Your eyes are red and puffy." "I think I've got hay fever. They can't stop watering. That's why they're red," I lie. "I don't believe a word of it," said my brother. "It's Luke, isn't it? Nancy said she saw him hanging around with Eloise Parker. Oh my God, he's dumped you, hasn't he?" "If you must know, I dumped him," I pipe. "You dumped him? But why are you upset?" "Because he's moved on so quickly, replaced you with Eloise Parker," chuckles my brother. "Who would date Eloise Parker? She's such a..." "Such a what?" I ask. "You know, teacher's pet, goody two-shoes, wet blanket. She's not nearly as pretty as you either." "You think I'm pretty?" I ask. "No, I wouldn't go that far, sis, but anyone's better than Eloise Parker." "Please can't we stop talking about her?" I say. "I don't want to think about Eloise." "Fine by me, sis." I decide to get out of the house to block Luke from my mind. The visions of him spending time with Eloise Parker was doing my head in. I felt so mad at him for being so offhand with me, dumping me like that, as if I meant absolutely nothing to him. How dare he? I'd love nothing better to shake him so vigorously hard and knock some common sense into him and show him exactly what he's lost. I amble over to the yard shed to get my bike, with Jinxie, our Irish wolfhound, following excitedly behind me. He wasn't used to getting a walk in the afternoon like this, so he was over the moon, thumping his tail and jumping around exuberantly, as if all his Christmases had come at once. "Woof, woof, woof," he barks appreciatively. "Where are you going, sis?" my brother asks me. "I'm taking Jinxie for a walk to the woodgrove. I won't be long." "Shouldn't you tell Mummy where you're going?" "You tell her." "All right, but make sure you're not long, or she'll do her nut. You know what she's like." I sighed with relief when I climbed on the back of my bicycle. I always found cycling in the prepossessing countryside so liberating, so exhilarating, so uplifting, the quintessential antidote to those desolate, glum, gloomy, heavy-hearted feelings that could so easily get you down. Somehow being out in the natural world was a powerful antidepressant, and whenever I was despondently sad, taking a ride on the back of my bicycle had always miraculously lifted me out of my comfortless melancholia. I felt as free as a bird, unshackled, untethered, unconfined by all the worries that had cruelly held me hostage during the worst day ever. A cool, refreshing breeze was blowing against my hair, and Jinxie was dutifully following behind me. It was as if for a brief, blissful moment all the troubles of the world had been lifted off my shoulders, and my salty tears were evaporating like a dried-up old riverbed. My ravaged heartbreak had momentarily been confiscated, as if it had all been just a bad dream. Oh my word, it was such an incredible day. The afternoon sunshine cast its shafts of sunlight across the grey asphalt road, hugging me magnanimously with its effusive warmth, while many of the trees fringing the road on either side were mirrored in this grey granular expanse, like the delicate reflections on a silvery lake. The voluptuous contours of their boughs moved against the frisky breeze, as if the trees were all dancing. At least they had something to be happy about, I thought, on a day when my heart had been so heinously broken by my heedlessly inconsiderate 16-year-old boyfriend Luke, whom had unmindfully shown me today of all days that he didn't give a damn about me. Well, it was his huge loss. He'd soon learn that Eloise Parker was no patch on me. When he came running back to me, begging me to forgive him, there would be another boy on my arm. See how he'd like that. I would look at him with the same contemptuous opprobrium and derision that he'd shown me today, and say, "Get over it, Luke." It would seem that for me, entertaining such malignantly revengeful, waspish thoughts was offering me a great measure of satisfaction. I knew that Eloise Parker would not hold Luke's attention for very long. I was sure of that. Jinxie was barking happily, while the blue sky hovered above us, scattered with a few white fluffy clouds. There were a couple of birds circling the firmament with outstretched wings. I think they were kites, but I couldn't be sure, as I was no expert on our feathery friends, of which we get many unusual species in this part of the world. On the horizon, lounging lazily under the sun, like old friends you've known all your life, were the rugged lineations of the mountains. Like two fat ladies were sunbathing proudly, squatting luxuriously on their sizable girths, their imposing silhouettes never failing to grab one's attention. Before long I'd reached the woodgrove, where I parked my bike against one of the trees and pulled out my tennis ball from my pocket. "Get it, Jinxie," I cry. He dashes after the ball, and I throw it for him again and again and again. I love this woodgrove with all my heart. It's the go-to place for many people in our part of the world, that know about it, that is, with fabulous precipitous trails that wind through the woods, where Douglas firs, western cedars, hemlocks and maple trees congregate happily together. It's quite common to see people walking their dogs here in the late afternoon, but I only see old Mrs. Melansky coming through the woodgrove with her two black Scotties today. "Hello, Frida. How are you today?" she asks, as her dogs enthusiastically greet mine. "I'm fine, Mrs. Melansky. And you?" "Let's just say, Frida dear, it's been one of those days today when everything's gone wrong from the very moment I woke up. I always come to the woodgrove to relieve my stress on days like this." "Don't worry, Mrs. Melansky. I've also had a lousy day today. You're not alone in that." "Oh dear, I'm sad to hear that, dear. Maybe there's something in the water today. See you around, Frida." "See you around, Mrs. Melansky." I was glad to see that the woodgrove was so quiet, not a single soul in sight. And in the late afternoon, the light was beginning to change. It was softening, the shadows twinkled through the canopy. My feet enjoyed the feeling of crunching bracken and twigs beneath the soles of bright orange sneakers, while my dog Jinxie got caught up in a sensory paradise where he was smelling everything with an enthusiastic gusto and lifting his leg up on every available surface to leave his autograph behind for any other dogs, to let them know that Jinxie had been there. The walk in the woodgrove had been pleasant. I was feeling very uplifted. Somehow the fresh air and the exercise nursed my festering wounds, and, of course, the soulful melancholia. It was only when I retreated out of the woodgrove that I knew something was off. Jinxie was barking, as if he too was a little off-centre. I searched for my bicycle, that was parked against the gnarled oak tree, but it wasn't there any more. Not my bike, or even the gnarled oak tree. I was so bewildered. I knew what my mother would say, that I was becoming scatty, but this was not the case. I knew my bearings. I knew this woodgrove like the back of my hand. I had played here as a young girl hundreds of times over. I even knew individual trees and landmarks, and this woodgrove appeared to have changed, and my bike was nowhere to be found. I was grateful to see that Jinxie was looking as befuddled as I was. So I wasn't going completely mad. I had no idea what my mother would say if I returned home minus my bicycle that had been given to me for Christmas. It was an expensive gift. But I couldn't help it, could I? If someone had stolen it. I can see my mother telling me off for parking it in a conspicuous place where it could be seen. But then again, in our small town, we had never ever had problems with theft before. As I trudge along the road back home, everything feels different. And the only way I can describe it to you, it's as if you've been away from your small town for 15 years or more, and you return over a long period of absence or a lengthy sabbatical when so much has changed. Trees have grown exponentially. Extensive renovations have occurred to properties. House colours are different. It was like that in our neighbourhood, but not over a lengthy period of time, within the course of a 20-minute walk. I thought I was losing my mind. The house colours in our street had changed in a matter of minutes, and tiny trees appeared to have grown into skyscrapers, and Mrs. Morris, whose dilapidated house was the eyesore of our town, as it was crumbling and falling apart, seemed to have been miraculously renovated and restored into an attractive building with pristine lawns, manicured hedges, and colourful flower beds. Gone were the overgrown grass, angry, ugly weeds that punnelled their way aggressively through her lawn. Gone were the warped rafters and the jagged cracks across her house. All the houses in our street were different. What the hell was going on? Finally, I get to my home. It's exactly the same house in every way, but instead of white walls, the house is painted in a coral colour, with a black roof. It's much prettier than our house, that I actually know. The garden is dreamy, filled with an abundance of mixed perennials. Let's just say, even if our house was undergoing a makeover, there is no way that in a matter of 20 minutes my house could change from white to coral. That just doesn't happen. You would think I would be afraid, but fear did not even enter the equation for me. I was confounded, and a feeling of discombobulated disorientation had commanded my immediate focus. I get to our front door. The one I'm used to has scratches from Jinxie on the outside, but this front door is gleaming brightly. It's polished in a black colour, with a very fancy golden knocker. For a moment I consider knocking, and then I realise that's silly. I mean, this is my home after all, even if it has undergone some strange metamorphosis. I push open the door, to find that it doesn't squeak like my door at home, and I call out again, "Ma'am, ma'am, are you there?" A young boy of about my age, about 16 or 17, is standing in the entrance hall staring at me blankly, with a befuddled look on his face. "Who are you?" he asks. "I'm Frida," I say. "Who are you?" "I'm Martin. Why did you just barge into our house like this? Haven't you heard of knocking?" I stammer awkwardly. I'm not sure exactly what's going on." "That makes two of us. I don't know why you came around today. I sent messages to everyone. You should have got yours. Mum's not taking piano lessons for the next few days. I'm afraid she's come down with a bad cold. She's not feeling great. I take it you must be one of her pupils." I'm just about to answer when a woman in a dressing gown comes into the entrance hall, blowing her nose. She looks as white as a ghost. She really is sick. "I'm sorry, Mum. I thought I'd cancel all your pupils today. But Frida here obviously never got my message, so she's turned up for her piano lesson. I've just been telling her you're not seeing pupils because of your flu." "This young lady is not one of my pupils, son. Who are you?" she asks me. "My name is Frida," I say, looking confused. "What's going on here?" Martin and his mother give each other a strange look. "This is my home," I explain. "I live here with both of my parents and my brother. Only my home is white. It's not as pretty as this. It's not this coral colour. I left it a moment ago for a walk in the woodgrove. I've just come back from the woodgrove. The whole neighbourhood has changed. And now you're living in my house, and I don't know who you are. I mean, this is the town of Roslyn, is it not?" "Sweetheart," says the woman, "are you on medication or something? Do you have a doctor I can call for you?" "I'm not sick. I don't have medication. Is this the town of Roslyn? It's not a difficult question to ask. Is it or is it not?" "No, sweetheart. This town is actually called Whitebridge. I've never heard of Roslyn before." "I don't understand," Look, dear, maybe you had a fall or something and are suffering from a concussion causing amnesia. Did you bump your head or something? I'll call Dr. Hughes for you if you like. He'll sort this out. He'll get you back home to your parents. No, it's fine, I say, backing out of the door. I call out to Jinxie, who's sniffing around the yard and lifting her leg up on everything. Come, Jinxie, let's go. I decide to run back to the woodgrove. I see a couple of boys riding bicycles. Excuse me, I say. What's the name of this town? Are you having a laugh? Asked one of the boys. This is the town of Whitebridge. I haven't seen you around here before. Who are you? That's because I live here, but I don't, I say. The boys give each other bewildered looks. You're not making sense. Believe me, I respond, nothing is making any sense right now. When I reach the woodgrove, I decide that if I walk in there again and come out, maybe the horrors of what have just transpired will just go away miraculously. A little like walking around a maze and finding the correct entrance. But lo and behold, I keep finding there is no gnarled oak tree when I exit the forest and no sign of my parked bicycle again and again. I'm so confused, I don't know what to do. So in despair, I sit underneath an oak tree and begin to cry. I want to get back home, but I don't know how to. I don't understand how even the name of the town I know so well has changed. What is going on? All of a sudden, Jinxie is barking. I sense something or someone is watching me. I look up to see a Bigfoot standing yards away from me, and he's staring at me with a perturbed look on his human-like face. It's like his expression is saying, "What are you doing here?" It's like he knows I don't belong here. In normal circumstances, I would be confounded, afraid even. But everything that is transpiring to me right now is fallaciously surreal, airily unorthodox, phantasmagoric, that if a bunch of dinosaurs was to come thundering through the forest right now, like in Jurassic Park, I probably wouldn't even batter an eyelid. The Bigfoot is huge. I mean, he's easily over 9 foot tall, 800 pounds, and 4 foot wide across the shoulder area. He's covered in long, flowing, dark brown hair. I can see the grey skin beneath that reveals a remarkable muscular density that would almost certainly be the envy of any bodybuilder, as this creature is impressively ripped, with overlong arms that travel beyond his knees, and powerful legs built like 2 sizable tree trunks. The Bigfoot's pyramid-shaped head is low slung on his shoulders. His face is so human, only rugged and weathered-looking, with a wizened look about it. For some reason I find myself staring at the Bigfoot's eyes, and in them I can see an intelligence that I've never seen in eyes before. It's like his eyes could see beyond this world, if that was possible. For some reason I feel as if I can talk to this Bigfoot. I sense he might actually be able to help me with my strange dilemma, my obvious pickle that I've got myself entangled in. My dog Jinxie is smelling the Bigfoot very intently and embarrassingly has his obtrusive, investigative, trespassing nose firmly parked in the Bigfoot's groin. And worse still, he begins to lick it with his long pink tongue, and then does something that unsettles me so much. He lifts his leg up on the Bigfoot and pees on the creature, and smells the spot as if to say, "Good, I've left my mark on you. Now I own you." "I'm so sorry," I say. The Bigfoot is not remotely concerned, but leans over to stroke Jinxie, who looks like a toy poodle next to the Bigfoot, and Jinxie is not a small dog. "Can you help me?" I ask the Bigfoot. "I can't find my way home. I come from the town of Roslyn. This town is Whitebridge. I don't know where I am." The creature looks into my eyes, and I swear he can read me like a book. He takes me by my hand so gently, but I feel like a tiny doll next to him. But I know I can trust him. I also know he can help me. How I know this, I don't actually know. He leads me towards a tree, where I notice prisms of light and dust specks emanating from it, a little like when you shine a torch in a dark place, and you pick up all those dust particles in the light. It looked like that. I stand there for a moment with the Bigfoot. Nothing untoward happens at first, but when the Bigfoot accompanies me through the forest, I find the gnarled oak tree, and my bike perched against it. How did this happen, I wonder? I stood in that prism of light with the Bigfoot, and I'm now back home, as if by magic. I'm so ecstatic, so consumed with relief, that I spontaneously run up to the Bigfoot and hug him. But my arms don't even get very far in cradling him. He's so incredibly large. It's a little like trying to hug a redwood tree. And you know what that's like. You're not going to get your arms around it easily. I unequivocally know that this Bigfoot helped me find my way back home to the town of Roslyn. But where had I been? That was the enigmatic mystery. Thank you, I say to him, tears of relief spilling down my cheeks. I can taste the salt in my mouth. Then I hear the words in my head, "It's only a pleasure." Did the Bigfoot just speak to me? And when I look up at his eyes, they're twinkling, and I know he did speak to me, and I'm flabbergasted. The Bigfoot watches me as I climb onto my bicycle, with Jinxie running behind me. On my route home, I see old Mr. Frank Dowling walking along the road with his black Labrador following him. Let's just say that Frank Dowling is known as the cantankerous, very grumpy character in our neck of the woods. He looks up at me in surprise when I say, "Mr. Dowling, it's so good to see you. Isn't it a wonderful day today?" He grumbles under his breath and walks away, somewhat startled by my effusive warm greeting. He's not used to anyone being pleased to see him, and he gives me some strange sideward glances. Finally, when I find my way back home and trundle down the driveway, where I park my bicycle against the shed, my mother comes storming out of the house like a belligerent bull. She looks furious, but I'm so thrilled to see her, I can't stop smiling at her like a Cheshire cat. "You think this is funny, Frida? You go to the woodgrove without telling me first, and you've been gone for 2 hours. I've been worried sick about you." I throw my arms around my mother and give her an effusive hug. "Oh, Mum, it's so good to see you. I've missed you so much. I'm so glad to be home." My spontaneous loving outburst has rather derailed my mother's anger. She hugs me back. "Honestly, Frida, you're so soppy. I'm glad to see you too, but for goodness sake, don't do that to me again. The next time I'll be calling out a search party for you." The next person I throw my arms around is my brother. He retracts and squirms. He hates being manhandled and doesn't like spontaneous gestures of affection. "What's all this about, sis? You're acting as if you haven't seen me in a decade." "You don't know the half of it," I tell him. For a long time I pondered about what could have happened to me on that day when I found myself in another dimension or a parallel universe. I can't be sure. I was to discover that this has happened to many people, not just me, possibly more than would ever dare to admit it, for fear of sounding as if they'd lost leave of their senses. There are all kinds of stories about people who found themselves in parallel universes or a glitch in time. I was to discover that many scientists now support the idea of parallel universes beyond our own. But this multiverse theory does remain controversial. Even Stephen Hawking and Erwin Schrödinger believe in a number of universes much like our own. Max Tegmark believes there are 4 distinctive types of parallel universes, and a recent article I found suggested physicists in Antarctica had found evidence of parallel universes, but I don't need their evidence to prove what I already know. They do exist. I also know that Bigfoot understands these different parallel worlds and universes, and he knows how to access them through portals or something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to help me in the way that he did. When that creature saw me, he knew I didn't belong to that dimension, which does make me wonder about whether each dimension gives off a discernible frequency. Just a thought. If I could go back in time, I'd find out more about that place I visited, Whitebridge. But I was just too desperate to get out of there and find my safe way back home. To cut a long story short, my remarkable enigmatic experience happened about 30 long years ago. A long time ago, shall we say. Today I'm equally as bad about getting up in the morning. Some things just don't change. I recently got a new Irish wolfhound that I've called Jenky after Jinxie, that has chewed up dozens of my shoes. I don't know what it is about dogs and my shoes, because I don't have smelly feet. But even my husband has commented on how his shoes always remain untouched by the dogs. If you're wondering who my husband is, Yes, call me a sucker for punishment. I ended up marrying that obnoxious kid Luke, who dumped me for Eloise Parker. Of all the strange things to happen, Luke and his family left our town when I was 17. I never saw him for 10 years, until he turned up for the school reunion. I wanted to hate him, I really did, for what he'd done to me all those years ago. But I surrendered to his charm, and of course it helped he told me that Eloise Parker was his biggest mistake. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.